Mayor Pro Tem Gardner,
Here.
Councilmember Bergen, Councilmember Coombs,
Present.
Councilmember Jurenski. Here. Councilmember Lawson. Councilmember Marcano.
Present.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Murillo. Councilmember Sumberg.
Here.
Councilmember Spot.
All right, budget rules for the day. No punching, kicking, or fighting. No rings, and then it's just tape measure.
I got my cord out, there you go. No, so we've got, on the rules for the day, we'll just, in terms of how we're organized, you'll see on the agenda, we've kind of got them in groups. We're gonna start with, the council appointees, go through those. So we've got city attorney, civil service, court admin, judicial, public defender. And from there, we can have it by DCM group. For the DCM groups, we've got most folks actually staged out in the lobby. So we'll just need a brief minute to kind of change over. We didn't want to make this room a heat dome, so we're just keeping folks out there. We'll rotate them in on that. And then in terms of the other rules we have is typically if council wants to make a change, we will be keeping track of any changes you all want to make. What we've typically done in the past, and this is why we're stopping here, is typically takes 5 votes to put something on the board. We keep track of all the things that you want to do, and then once we get through all of departments and operations, we then come back and you all will do a final vote and you need 6 votes to keep something in. So that's how we've done it in the past. I don't know if you want to revisit that rule, but that's what we've done in the past in terms of how we handle changes. And obviously, if we make any additions, we have to figure out a funding source, and we'll track all that in terms of both deletions and additions and give you all a running total as we go.
Any questions, discussion on the rules? Council commission appointees, city attorney.
So, we've done what we were requested of all departments, which was no ads. Now, there is an exception. We have added, because of the statute regarding domestic violence cases, we have added victim witness liaisons. Those are admin positions that reach out to victims and witnesses and get them scheduled to come in.
Okay, questions of city attorney? Civil Service Commission.
Morning, everyone. No ads from what was presented as part of the budget workshop or the budget presentation.
Any questions, Civil Service Commission? Thank you. Court Administrator.
Good morning. Other than what was presented, I don't have any additional ads. We're just asking for our probation pilot program, which was minimal.
Questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember Khan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Candace. So I wanted to circle back to some of the questions I asked during our special study session around the vacancies. So I actually received some information that we have, looks like 15 vacancies currently. I believe we were told we only had 4. So could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, some of them are in the works. We have one position of court clerk 3 that we're keeping vacant because it offsets a VRBE position that we have. And
What
this,
is that?
It's a variable hour benefited position, so it's essentially a temporary position. Sorry, I'll translate city bureaucratic alphabet, so thanks.
yes, so that was a position that was moved over from detention into case management and not reclassified. So that's how we took care of that and took care of that employee. We have a program specialist that's currently going through background in probation. Then we have a program analyst who that position has been posted for some time. We have not received any qualified applicants since it's been vacant. It's only been vacant for a couple of months. The person we had in there before left. And then we have a business analyst position. We conducted interviews last week. We have some in detention. officer senior positions that have been vacant because they just don't have time to interview. There was a detention officer in there that was filled. And then they have a detention tech that they're in the middle of reclassifying to a detention officer. We have several that are in background or interviewing for. Part of the problem that we're finding that when they're in background, because it takes so long to get them cleared, that we're losing them, but those are positions that we need. Currently, we only have the first floor of our detention center open, but we need to open the second floor so that we can do minimises. Right now, we don't have enough staff that's trained or on board in the detention center to do that. So that was a quick overview, I'm sorry.
You're good, you're good. So I guess I just want to first start with why were we told that we had between 2 and 4 vacancies when the reality is that we have many more?
Well, I mean, I consider the ones that are in background and that we're currently recruiting for not really, in my view, vacant.
Is there a person in that position?
Pardon?
Is there a person in that position?
No.
That's a vacancy, ma'am. My next question is, why do we have 2 tranches here where we have 4 folks resigning at a time for our detention officers?
I'm sorry, what?
Looking at the staffing report here, we have 2 tranches where we had 4 detention officers resign at the same time, twice.
Sometimes that's a promotion. I mean, I didn't look at that, but sometimes they're going from a detention officer to a sergeant or to a senior. It's not always that they've moved, and we've had several that we had to terminate for after investigations, but I didn't research that specifically.
Okay. The reason I'm asking about detention officers is because I've heard, I know Councilmember Janinski also has heard that our officers are upset with how much time it takes to book folks, and my understanding is this is actually a direct contributor. So why haven't we done a better job of filling these positions?
Well, we're trying right now. There's a priority at the police department. So when we have people in background checks, if they're, we're getting ready to do a class, then they're held. So that's sometimes, and then we lose them. But we have done a lot of studies on ways to improve the amount of time that it takes to do that handoff, and it's not all detention. It's detention and police officers, and we're working together to resolve some of those. But we have not found that it's totally detention.
So, this is the same process? Is this the same process that APD goes through? Because why is it taking so long to do?
Mayor, can I answer this, please? Because we've hashed this out thoroughly in the Public Safety Committee. So it is twofold what she is saying. Some of it is the requirements on the jail, on the detention side, but also some of it is what is required on the reporting side from the police. So what the officers have to fill out, what paperwork they have to do, and what they have to go through before they can even leave the jail. So this has been one of the things.
Yeah, okay, but separately, so here's my question is that this in the hiring process, right? Why is it taking so long? And we're losing people in other agencies in the hiring process.
Well, I mean, part of it is because I increased the requirements for them to come on board. We were finding that we had a lot of issues in the jail. And so we added a lie detector test and a psychological exam, trying to do a better hire. But then as, they're going through that, but then they're sitting, we're waiting for HR to complete the background check. I think our chief that we just hired in detention, it took, I think almost 5 months to get him all the way through the process. And luckily he had a job and he was retiring, so we didn't lose him.
Well, okay, that's not a budget issue, but that's something that we need to look at. And the committee, Councilmember Cohen.
So just going back to the total vacancies here, and I'm curious to know, where are the vacancy savings going?
Well, we had $500,000. Well, they're twofold. I mean, in the budget, there is a line item that says vacancy savings and they deduct it. but we have had, because of the changes, we're going to be going to 2 virtual courts. So we've spent, or we're scheduled to spend, about $500,000 doing some remodeling inside our detention center to accommodate doing, sorry, I'm losing my voice, to accommodate doing 2 courtrooms at the same time. So we've done that, and then I set aside $100,000 for the new computer system in the event that it's approved, so that we have that cushion there. And also there was some unbudgeted issues with the detention and the marshals that we weren't aware of until we had our new chief. So we had to purchase new weapons and about $20,000 in ammunition or ammo. I don't know. So there's been a lot of unexpected things that we did not budget.
Because I mean, the total.
Mayor,
Sorry.
Councilmember Combs, sorry.
can I follow up on that? So there were items that you needed in the jail that you weren't aware that you needed?
Well, yeah, safety items and such, because I think we had an intern for a while, and then we had a permanent chief, and he's a little bit more versed on what is needed. And so they're trying to do a little catch up as we find money in the budget.
Okay, and then for the vacancies that are in place, what are you doing right now to fill the staffing needs when you have, it looks like 10 detention officer vacancies plus some additional senior detention officer vacancies?
Well, we're continually, I think they just did more interviews last week. We're continuing to, try to fill the vacancies and try to anticipate the loss of some of the employees while we're going through the process. But I think at one point we had like 6 officers that were out there that we didn't need, but then the vacant, they went away, so we had to move them from holding into a position. So it's a continual process for detention. And of course, they have other things that they do too, but they interview probably every other week.
Okay, but like who's doing the work right now with that many vacancies?
Well, that's why we haven't opened the second floor and why we're not doing minimuses on a regular basis. So when they're sent and they do 3 or 4 days at a time, we haven't been able to accommodate that. Well, it would be more than 3 days, but so we're not fully open. We're just open on the first floor, but we need to open the second floor, which would take those 10 additional officers or more to rotate through there so that we can go back to what we call fully operational.
Okay, and have you considered contract positions to address those staffing issues and inability to operate at full capacity?
Well, I mean, we train them for 12 weeks, so I don't, that's something that I wouldn't be comfortable with. That's one of the most, one of the areas where we could have lawsuits the highest. So we would rather know that we're getting staff in there that's trained and that is, can do the job and that they're going to be there long term. When you do contract, I mean, every time we've done a contract, they last for a couple of months and then they're gone, and we've invested all the time in training and then they don't stay.
Councilmember Jaworski.
Yeah, thank you. Candace, even with the new mandatory minimum jail ordinances, have we ever been at full capacity in the jail thus far where we needed to open the second floor and have that staffing?
Well, that's there's times when we should have, because if they're on a 3-day MIT, they should have they shouldn't be in a jail cell that is more confined and less freedom. And so we've been housing them on the first floor when we really shouldn't. They should be on the second floor where, they are treated a little bit differently than somebody that's going in and out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you face any liability issues for that?
No, we're not violating any of their rights. It's just, that's not really what they were put in there for, was to be put into the mainstream.
Sure. Further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Combs.
So on that point, if there's not a need to be staffing, if we can operate with 12 fewer detention officers than we have, do we actually need 12 more positions, or do we need to look, as Councilmember Jurinski was looking at in last year's budget, at cutting some of these long-term vacancies?
Well, that's, right now, thankfully, the judge has agreed not to send people on a MIT unless it's, the ones that we have to do. So I'm sure that he would like the ability to do that in sentencing, and that's something that we've always done. But right now, we're in an agreement until we get fully staffed or more staff, that he only does it on egregious cases or ones that have been mandated for that amount of time.
Further discussion?
Mayor, can I just ask just one question?
Councilmember Lawson.
So, Candace, what's your recruiting strategy? I mean, what has been your recruiting strategy?
Well, it's not that we can't find them and we don't put them in and offer them a position. We just have been trying to work with HR to figure out how, to move them faster so that we can get them on board before we lose them. But it's not that we don't get applications. It's not that we don't find qualified people. It's just that lag time, where we lose them.
Councilmember Jurinski, great issue for your policy committee. Councilmember Summer.
Ryan was here from HR.
Yeah, we wanted to ask right now on the spot what the issue is.
We have Ryan available, so we can ask Ryan to come in. We can bring him.
15 vacancies. New vacancies.
How are they doing it? Are they going out to meet other, like, how many people come from Denver and person? I'm just trying to figure out if they don't have people getting plenty of applications, they're just losing. But it seems like there's a gap.
Is that true of courts too, Daniel? Because I know that was true of APD's hiring. That just took all some of this for us.
Sure, and they're getting abundance of applications. You don't need to go look anywhere else. The problem when they send you, when they're applying, so it's during the only for us, he was able to stay in his current job until this was hit bill. This is the problem. That's what Steve and I are like, all ears right now. I should
We need to do something like we did with civil service.
He's online, Mayor.
Ryan's online, okay.
We table the policy.
Oh, he's in his office.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So the question is around court experiencing some high level of vacancies, specifically in the detention function, and what we can do to help court administration get those positions filled, and if we're seeing if we've done any type of analysis, I think, around.
No, it's specifically the hiring time, Ryan. Why is it taking so long from the time somebody applies to get them in the position in detention?
Well, I believe any type of delays could be the background process. From my understanding that we are going through a standard background process with them. And I haven't actually heard of any specific delays, at least from my side. So now that it's brought to my attention, I'm sure we can go ahead and do some analysis and figure out what's going on timing wise.
Do you do the background check internally, or do you do it under contract with someone else, third party?
We do it internally. We took that over, and maybe Candace, you might be able to speak to this, probably about 9 months ago, right when we were building up and developing the centralized background process.
What was it? How was it done before that?
Candace had someone on staff to do it.
Okay. Councilmember O'Connell.
Mayor, thank you. Ryan, do you know offhand how many positions we have posted, vacant positions we have posted for court administration?
Not off the top of my head, but I could definitely look into it,
Yeah.
shortly.
Would expect to see a lot given the number of vacancies.
Yeah.
Ryan,
We did get an email from Jackie this morning with all the current ones.
Ryan, how long does the background process normally take?
Well, a standard background process, if there's not a lot of complications with the actual candidate, could take about a 4-week process. If it could be 3 to 4 weeks is what we shoot for. But if it's complicated, if it's an out-of-state person, lived in multiple counties, so it requires a lot more background and investigation, then it could take a little bit longer. So it really varies, but we shoot for 3 to 4 weeks of a full background process.
Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Jersey.
Yeah, so Ryan, we're being told though that like our jail director specifically, it took 5 months from start to finish for him to get through the process and be hired on. So we're being told 5 months.
Okay. Well, I did hear a while ago that there was 1 or 2 situations that took a little bit longer. I think that had to do with just the timing of transitioning over to HR, maybe the particular candidate at that time. And then also at that time was right when we were taking over the background process. So it was a kind of a transition.
Okay, further questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Thank you, sir. And this is germane to the budget. So looking at what we were sent this morning, we have 21 vacancies in the court administration department. Some of these have been open for more than a year. So I'd like to get some more information maybe to y'all's committee to talk about why we have so many openings, why they haven't been filled yet, and what the strategy is to get these filled. So I do find that to be really troubling. And I do have an additional question directly related to the budget regarding the case management software, which I'm fully supportive of moving forward and digitizing the courts, but why is it that the ask this year is 700,000, last year was 400,000?
Well, I've done, as we know, there's been increases in everything, and I've done some checks. And that's probably on the low side, but we're a larger court and it's going to take some customization. But I've done a little bit more background, and we've, gotten preliminary numbers, but, nothing is solid until we go out to RFP.
Yeah. So what were your preliminary estimates then?
The 700.
700 on the top? Okay.
Further questions on the courts?
Mayor,
Councilmember Zavonic, then Councilmember.
I'd just like to, I guess, make a request, maybe Candace, that, given the high number of vacancies and some of them that have been open for a long time, is that if you could come back to public safety and make a recommendation of how many of them we could eliminate that are needed. Because if we're just holding, we've seen this in last year's budget where there were vacancies that weren't going to be filled. And so we were just literally holding that up in the budget, and I'd rather not do that. So if you could put that together for us.
Well, currently, one of the things that we're over budget in our overtime, and we have mandatory overtime. And so, eventually we don't want to lose employees because of burnout either.
Right.
So,
those dollars can be freed up for that type of thing instead of holding them for employees that are never going to be there. And that's what I wanted to make sure that we're not doing, is holding FTE positions and budget that could otherwise be allocated to something like.
I think that's I think you're right, Councilmember Zavonic. That's something that the committee should really do a deep dive on in terms of making a recommendation to full council. Okay. Are there further questions or comments?
Mayor.
Oh, Councilmember Coates, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. With respect to the case management system, have you identified a specific vendor at this point?
No, I reached out to Tyler Technology in full court, but there's, until we go out to the RFP, we can't really settle on a vendor. And I just went out to the people that I was aware of that work in Colorado with municipal courts.
Okay, and then the other question I have is also related to the case management system. Within court IT, I know there in the past few years have been a lot of conversations about that. Is there capacity within court IT to implement a system of this scale?
Well, that's something that is helpful when it's off the shelf and by a vendor, that you get that assistance from their side. It's going to be a big lift, but right now, we have one programmer that knows our system, and luckily he's been with the city since he was 16, but being reliant on a employee for a court-wide system is there's a lot of risk there that we really need to get away from. And there's never going to be a good time to do this, right?
Okay. Further questions?
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I have a couple more. Okay, so, and then what is going to be the role of the workload study in informing the purchase of the IT system? Like, are we just making really generalized assumptions that don't have that workload study that we've already paid for, informing what the case management system looks like?
Well, I mean, I think the caseload study is going to help us identify processes and what we need from a vendor. I still think there's a lot of value in the average amount of time per case, which is going to tell us or help us with staffing and are we at the correct level. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question. I'm sorry.
I just am wondering, prior to the completion of that study, do we have the information we need to be going out to RFP for this vendor for this system?
Well, the work study isn't complete, and I wouldn't say the two are really related. You know, we know we need to go out to RFP and we'll put the requirements in it, but the two are not related really, in my opinion.
Okay, that's odd. I thought that was part of the conversation that we had last year when talking about the workload study, was that it would also give us information that we needed for implementing the case management system. But I do have one other question, which is related to the pilot program for the fees. It looks like we're only being asked for $15,000 for next year, but I think we have already, as of September, spent all of the $75,000 that were allocated for this year. So is the amount that's being asked for going to actually cover the need? And if not, what is the impact to defendants who may be having a year-long program of not being able to get the voucher starting September? Will they be unable to complete their programs if they don't have those funds?
Well, you know, part of I think there was an estimate on how much we needed, and I was given an estimate that the funding should be enough for this year and next year. But once the program really started ramping up and they started, you know, giving the money out, it started. The need was a little bit more than what was projected. So we were spending between $12,000 and $14,000 a month. But as people were signing up, we made sure and let them know that there may not be these funds throughout their whole year, but we would help them as much as we could until the funding went out. So we stopped the funding as of September 15th, and I believe we have $2,000 in there, but the budget cycle had already gone forward and I couldn't ask for any more money at that time because it was too late.
Okay, but so for 2024, do we need $14,000 per month for this program?
Well, if we're going to continue it, then yes, but if we don't, we'll take the $15,000 and the leftover we have from this year and do what we can for the clients that we have.
Mayor? Can I propose that we put on the board and add to that line item for court administration to make it $14,000 per month for the voucher program for folks that are going through probation? Because it sounds like what's happening is that folks are actually going through treatment and they're actually getting the things they need. So I'd like to propose that we put that on the board for further discussion.
Very well. All those who support the proposal. Councilmember McConnell. Yeah. Councilmember Moreno. Yeah. Councilmember Medina.
I would also add that we cut the funding from this original proposal from 145, I think, to 75. And the 145 amount that I brought last year was actually done in partnership with Candace and our former chief public defender, based off of her experiences in Westminster, if I remember correctly. So we underfunded it. So now they're coming back to us. So just please, in good faith, support this so that the pilot can actually make it through.
Okay, Councilmember
To
O'Connor.
clarify, this is paying for classes?
This is the probation pilot, and it seems to be very highly utilized, which means it's probably working. and
Yeah, we're
delivering
paying
good
for
results.
classes, right?
Yeah.
Paying for criminal classes, people that have been convicted of a crime,
So
we're
they
paying for their classes?
Don't reoffend, that's correct.
Right, yeah, I don't think you have 5 votes.
Let's see, Councilmember Combs.
I mean, it sounds like we don't have the 5 votes to
Okay, well,
actually
for
address
purposes of,
recidivism.
for purposes of discussion, I'm gonna, and to put it on the board, because that's not a final decision, but I think I wanna, in the meantime, find a little bit more about this. It's not really clear. So I'll put my name on it. So let's put it on the board for further discussion.
$153,000 one time in court admin. 153.
So 168.
168 minus 15 is the 15.
Oh, okay, I have a question.
Councilmember
So
Moreno.
which side's gonna be general?
Let's, Councilmember Moreno. I don't have a
We're gonna
gavel.
send our seats to-
You said you
Yeah, so I'll be discussing with you now.
Like, we're gonna pay for that criminal research while we're doing the rest of the meeting.
Rock, I'm like, go rock.
Okay, is there any further discussion on court administrator? Okay, seeing none, then, Judge Day, you are now.
Mayor, everyone.
She has a ton of vacancies.
Added, further asked, what was presented at the Tuesday budget presentation. But on behalf of the Judicial Department, I'm happy to accept anything that you might be willing to give.
Questions, judicial, of Judge Day? Seeing none,
Mayor?
are there-
Mayor, sorry, no, I
Oh,
do
Councilmember Combs?
have questions. Sorry, there was a lot of background noise. So I guess my question is, it looks like everybody else, other than the public defender who was abiding by the no ads rule, is adding for the Victim Rights Act law. And the court isn't, despite adding a second in custody division. So can you help me understand how the court is accommodating the changes to prosecution to comply with the Victim Rights Act?
No, thank you for the question. Appreciate it. We're able to accommodate all the requirements of the House bill within current staffing levels. We have changed the docket assignments for the current staffing levels. So although there will be a need for 2 divisions to handle in custody people every morning, one of the dedicated out of custody divisions will be taking over that in custody division. So the current staffing levels, we're able to accommodate all the requirements of the bill with current staffing levels.
Okay, can I just clarify? So are any of our relief judges going to be working more, or how is it that if we have a significant number more cases, including more folks in jail, which probably means more folks going to trial, how is it that that can be accommodated with no changes to staffing?
Right now, our out of custody domestic violence division is Division 3. So everybody that would be eligible for release on bond without seeing a judge that is facing a domestic violence allegation is appearing in front of Judge Copper in Division 3. Because the law will now require that the person see and be advised of the protective orders before they are eligible for bond. The Division 3 out of custody people will now be in custody, and the Division 3 division will be handling those in custody division people remotely from Division 3. So if that helps explain how the current staffing levels will cover the change in the law, we're able to, like I said, accommodate just where those people will be and how they will be seen by the current staffing levels.
Okay, can I continue, Mayor? Okay, that's super helpful. And this also includes the vertical prosecution. How does that impact judicial?
How does that impact, I'm sorry?
The judges, the judicial department.
And again, we're able to accommodate, and again, this is a big change for our court. It's a change, as I said, at the Tuesday budget presentation, a switch to vertical prosecution. We'll be changing everybody's docket. But again, because we believe that just by changing where the cases will be heard, we can accommodate with the current staffing levels. There wouldn't be any need for additional judges, judicial department staff members. We'll be able to move the dockets around to where I think it will actually be a benefit for our court. There'll be more efficiencies with the change in vertical prosecution. I truly anticipate that that will be a great benefit.
Further questions?
Okay, sorry, just one final thing, Mayor. Okay, so would it be safe to say that the other departments that are operating within the court, the public defender, the court administration, the city attorney, are going to be bearing additional burdens to kind of adjust to this new system, and that you're going to rely on that cooperation in order for this docketing change to be successful?
Again, I think I'm hopeful that with the change in the vertical prosecution case assignments, that there will be some efficiencies that will apply to all departments. Judicial, prosecutor's office, public defender's office, case management. There will be a huge learning curve when we make that switch. So there may be some challenges upon the implementation of that, and that will take effect January 1. How it would impact their current internal process and how that internal process is being assigned or those tasks are being completed by each department, I would have to leave it up to those department heads. But again, I think from at least what we see in the courtroom, we'll have true efficiencies with this change.
Okay, so will there be more in-custody arraignments that are going to require competency evaluations by having this new system and this new setup?
I think we can anticipate that that would be true, that there would be more people seen and evaluations done because there will be more people in the detention center. And again, that relates to all the questions that you just asked Candace about the staffing levels over at detention. Because there will be an increase in the people at our detention center because of the change in the law and the requirements of the law. There'll be more people there. We're trying, and I would defer to the public defender's office. Their employee in doing those initial screens and evaluations, mental health needs and issues. Will there be more people at the jail for that person or persons to see? Absolutely, there will be.
Okay, so just to confirm, that's the public defender's office employee that is seeing those folks as they come in and doing those screenings for competency evaluation.
They're doing the initial mental health screens, which could include competency issues. That's true, yes. And it is the public defender's employee.
Okay.
Mayor,
Councilmember Swan.
why is that? That seems to me to be a huge conflict of interest, to have their office being the one determining competency for trial. That seems to be something that should be housed in judicial.
That's a really good question. It can be raised by any party.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Raised by, but the evaluation done by the people who are going to then try to defend them and then have the ability to disqualify them before the case begins seems like a conflict of interest.
It's an initial
Mayor.
screen that person's doing on behalf of the public defender's office as their employee, but the the actual evaluations done by 2 independent doctors. And those evaluations are coming back to the court after those evaluations, that they're not tied to the public defender's office. They're actually totally 2 separate doctors that are contract with the court that are actually doing the competency evaluations, which we as the court would rely upon.
And I thought we had a contract with the Rural Mental Health to do some of the competency, right? Or is that just the case?
That's for 72-hour mental health screens and M1 screens that we have a contract with Rural Mental Health, but the actual doctors that we use to do the specific task of a competency evaluation are 2 separate doctors.
Okay, further questions? Thanks, Judge, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Well, public defender.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Elizabeth Cadiz again, for everyone that I've not met. And just to piggyback on the last question, if I could, I think what you may be referring to is the contract for the Aurora Mental Health involvement with the Aurora Sustained program. They are involved in those mental health screenings. The judge stays talking about they're working with our staff member to conduct the daily mental health screens, and then they're keeping most of the data and the protected health information, informing, the rate of homelessness among that population.
But they're not engaged in competency evaluation?
No, they were a long, long time ago, but they're not part of the competency piece. So there's no additions at present. I'm asking for an addition to add, to convert what is now a 30-hour VHPE position. We've called it a mental health professional, but I'm going to give you all a little bit of clarification because I think that might help understand what we're seeking. But we're asking to convert that to 40-hour FTE. We have grant funding. We obtained grant funding for the 3rd year in a row, but it's not a permanent source. So that's going to cover 30 hours of that 40-hour FTE. But we believe that because of the increase in the number of people that will have to be screened, that would justify moving it to a 40-hour position. The clarification I want to give you is this. Our current, this position is currently filled by a staff member that is a licensed professional counselor. He is a mental health professional. He is not, though, treating or acting in a capacity as a clinician in this program. So the only comparable I can really find is the AMRT program, how, and I believe it's Courtney that supervises that team of clinicians. She has a mental health background and training and experience actually that's similar to our current staff member that's doing this work. She's just overseeing and managing that program, and her training and experience helps her do that, allows her to do that, and oversee and ensure quality assurance. Our current employee is not the one who is doing the competency evaluation. He's conducting the mental health screening in the jail, and that mental health screening is really just a better version of what I could do or what my lawyers could do in a jail cell talking to a potential client, right? Because if there's somebody who's clearly exhibiting symptoms of a mental health issue, naturally I'm going to ask them about that. And I'm going to obtain that information because it's going to inform the way that we would advocate for them. He's just better at that. So he can actually make a referral then to Aurora Mental Health or another community partner. He also can make a recommendation right then and there to the court for an M1 hold. And that's a recommendation that a certified peace officer could make. But in the past, we've had to call for Aurora Mental Health and wait for them to come out to the detention center and to the court to do that evaluation, which I think is in part what Judge Day was referring to. And he's there to do that on the spot. So that's a huge time saving, especially when it's a really busy day in our in-custody unit, because we don't want to have to wait for someone to come over. I also think there's a safety benefit, because a lot of times, unfortunately, individuals who are you know, their behavior, their symptoms, the acute nature of the mental health condition that they're suffering from, could potentially cause safety concerns for people that are in the detention center or the marshals or the court. It's a logistical, I think, nightmare at times. So it really does make things go smoother. And then the second part of what he does is he and his team, which his team that he's overseeing, similar to the individual that supervises the AMRT program and those clinicians, his team is Aurora mental health therapists and clinicians, as well as students that they may be supervising. They're all collaborating at that initial screening point, alerting the defenders there about their concerns. That helps us know when to raise competency and make a better call, a better judgment call, which in the end saves the city money, saves the delay that's associated with having to do the competency evaluation and get that finding and determination, because we're just better at knowing if the person that appears to be struggling with competency is in fact incompetent. So the ask is $30,000 for next year. That's what the cost would be initially, but the ask is to make this person a 40-hour FTE, and the hope is too that this would allow for the viability of Aurora Sustained, which is a really great program. We're collecting data. I have things I can provide today if you right now for later if you want to consider that. But that's our request.
Questions are on the add-on, or on the department in general, and on the add-on?
Yes, so not to the add-on, but to the department. So a year ago, we had given direction to the city manager to look at the cost of potentially moving the way that we do public defender's office in the city to be privately contracted the way that it is in the majority of cities. For whatever reason, we're here a year later and that hasn't been done. And so I've been talking to our interim city manager and asking him in a just more direct way to go out, and I have a resolution that I'm bringing forward to put out an RFP to actually get a better view of the costs if we went out and contract to determine if we could provide the required representation for less than the $2.5 million we currently spend. If the answer is no, that's fine, but I believe it will be less. And that's why I'd like to do what we had talked about last year, which is go out and actually see if privately contracting this service would be a better benefit to the taxpayers of Aurora.
So that will be a resolution.
A resolution I'm bringing, I'm currently working with staff.
Okay.
May I just, and I promise it'll be shorter than a presentation, Mayor, but may I just ask one question for clarification to the council member on that?
Yes.
And I wasn't here at the last workshop, but my understanding of the situation was that what was decided upon was a cost benefit analysis and not just a cost comparison. And so I would just hope that the city council moving forward and the city manager would keep that in mind, because I think just to put it out as an RFP, first of all, I think there might be a hurdle with the commission in place, because the commission actually sets our budget and insulates us from action like this, but that might be a hurdle, but more importantly, there's a question about the benefit and service level that I think is needing to be part of that.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Then we're gonna have to vote separately on the add-on, I guess you would call it. Is there, okay, for those supportive of the $30,000 add-on, please say their
Coombs?
Okay, so enough have risen in support, so we'll be on the board.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the public defender for discussion? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, but it's in the meantime. You can go right ahead. It's in there.
Okay, we gotta bring people in, so why don't we take time is now 9:19, we'll take a break until 9:25.
It's hilarious.
that's fair or just, so how about we actually have the computer removal program be able to help private businesses as opposed to just focusing on public property? We're all paying taxes.
First I thought, I'm just.
Do you know how much of a waste it is on society when people read that?
Seriously.
There's an opportunity.
That's the thing, like, have you talked to our city attorneys, you know, prosecutors, and like, yeah, when they do it, very few times in, we actually, PT, like, they just get out and read it. They are way less likely to read it. They are, no, seriously, way less likely to read it. As opposed to if you just jail them, Danielle, they will more than likely read it. They'll just still go through and chew on public resources than in the courts. Whatever their sentences end up being, whether they go to Arapahoe County or whatever the case may be, it's still a net drag on society. That's why these programs are there. That's why Curtis's restorative justice.
Kim has been here since the earth was born.
Yeah, good to meet you. Hey, Mayor,
Any questions of Kim? Did you want to go over everything or just questions?
No, just
Okay,
questions.
and you got no add-ons, right?
Nope, not for communications.
Okay, any questions?
You know where to find me, thank you.
Okay.
Where?
Yeah, where?
Okay, finance?
Sure.
Are there questions of finance?
And no additions.
No additions? Just to avoid questions, I know, I like it. Thank you. Housing and Community Services?
So Jessica, as I mentioned, when we had our briefings, we had some additions here in the animal services area. So those are outlined. We can go into further detail as well as the mobile response teams and perhaps some satellite facilities once we get the animal services construction going, probably even before, to allow for capacity issues since we are having some issues at the shelter lately. So have Jessica stand for questions on those.
Okay, status of the 200-pound pig?
Yeah, so unfortunately have some rodeo skills on our enforcement team. We were able to lasso said pig. Crows was able to help us. We were able to transport the pig. It's at the shelter. It's in the
it's at the shelter.
literal. It's at the shelter. It's in the hold period for a stray a pig.
200-pound pig.
Wait, is that the same pig?
Aggressive
Runaway?
toward
No,
her.
no, that pig that was found before?
It was
same
at
pig?
large for about 3 days earlier in the week.
Remember the pig that was picked up?
I know, that's
I'm being serious. Do you remember the pig that was picked up by police like 4 or 5 months ago? It was in the communications.
It might have been.
This one was closer, this one was.
Same pig that
It was
belongs to my
started in
cousin.
airport and moved down. Anyway, we have several farms that want the pig.
Right now, I know that.
We should have called to a good
I'm gonna
place.
call right now.
Any other questions, Mayor?
Any other questions? Seeing none, thanks, Jessica.
All right.
Wow.
Council Newhouse.
There you go. Information technology?
Good morning. No additions, but any questions?
Questions? Thanks, appreciate it.
Okay, we've got, while we do a switch out, Laura's grabbing her team and bringing them in. we'll be ready for that, and we will add pig finders to the other duties that are assigned to council members. There we go.
I know who his pig belongs to. I'm not making a joke, I know who this
Your personal surface master. I thought the surface was that's what I really like. They have it so locked down that it makes it hard to get mine's just I mean, I actually really like it. I can't like download all the apps that I use.
I know, that's it. Okay. Let's go. I'll tell Jessica to check in. She's on the lobby.
I'll get to know them real good. I can give the ones that we were given like staff.
It's got a different sound.
Incorporate that into our 5-year capital. Actually, it's 3 years, I think, right? Yeah, it's 2 years.
APD picking up this?
I do.
Only me. It doesn't.
No, you're 3, won't it? Well, no, the ours would be on yours.
What's this say? What's up, baby? Oh my God, it's big.
It was in your yard, right? It was instituted.
My girls use it other than that, like, iPads are worthless. It's just getting some use myself. Like, there's that's been such a big miss by Apple.
Okay, we'll get updates on the pig as the day goes on.
That's right.
Laura Perry, Library and Cultural Services.
Good morning, Laura Perry, Deputy City Manager. We're starting off today with Library and Cultural Services. There are no amendments to their budget, and we have several staff here to answer any questions today.
Questions? Library and Cultural Services? None, thank you.
No answers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Coombs.
So there was a discussion from our CABC about possibly restructuring the department to include a deputy, since libraries and cultural services are a lot for one person to be handling. So has there been any discussion within the department about doing that in the future? And would that come for a supplemental, or what is the approach that staff are considering, or is that recommendation not being considered?
We have not had any of those conversations internally, but we are certainly always eager to look at building capacity within our departments, and so that's certainly something we can look at in the future.
Okay, great. Can we bring something to the PR Plus committee in the next few months to discuss what that might look like moving forward? Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on Library and Cultural Services? Seeing none, thank you. Parks, Recreation, and Open Space.
Okay, for pros for the budget for 2024, we do have a reorganization that is being completed utilizing existing vacant positions. And that reorganization will result in the creation of 2 new deputy directors, one over recreation, one over parks and open space, a second recreation manager position to build capacity within the recreation division, and a new project manager position focused on getting capital projects delivered more efficiently and expeditiously. We have Brooke Bell to answer any questions.
$1 million with the reorganization.
It's actually a reduction.
Oh, reduction. Oh, I like that. Please.
Mayor.
Councilmember Coombs.
Oh, Mayor, thank you. So I guess my question is, we know there's been an ongoing issue of vacancies with those lower paid kind of frontline employees. How will this impact the work that's being done by those employees? And is the intent to improve our ability to recruit, train, and retain those employees?
Yes, our intent is to improve the things that you just said, retain and train. a couple of things that we have done just recently on the Parks O&M side is that we have introduced a stipend for uniforms. It was one of the few departments that they're wearing their street clothes. Street clothes are expensive to do their work. And so we got a stipend where they'll have a jeans and a shirt uniform, and they won't be using their own money for their work apparel. Throughout the organization, the boot allowance was improved for many departments. So that was a big plus. For us in recreation, we also introduced a career progression framework for our O&M and our Osner staff, where we invest in them. If they do certain certifications, we pay for those certifications. They get a small wage increase, prepares them for the next step, and it makes them more competitive as they want to progress and improve the city benefits. And so they will get more money as they invest in themselves and with time and training. So we're excited about that. It compares to what they do, excuse me, in Aurora Water and also in Public Works. So the career progression. So we're excited about that. We will start looking at other divisions as well.
Further questions? Jason,
If there's no other questions, I want to take a real quick second and just let you guys know. So we have great employees across the city that do good things all the time. And we often call some of those folks heroes. We typically think of that as our firefighters, our police officers, our dispatchers. Those are folks that are literally doing life-saving efforts. We had an incident Thursday out at the reservoir where two of our patrons out at the reservoir just got done with a bike ride at dusk. They were loading their bikes back on their vehicles, and one of them collapsed. One of our other staff saw the collapse, called for our rangers. Our rangers responded quickly. When they got there to the gentleman, he was not breathing. They immediately began chest compressions. They used the AED. They were able to resuscitate him. We called our firefighters. They responded very quickly, and they were able to save that man's life. And so it's something that. Obviously, there's a partnership there from just, from the 911 call to our firefighters to everybody in terms of that response. But I just want you to know that we've got heroes across the organization. So we're going to be doing something for those two folks. Really thank Brooke for bringing that to our attention and management. We'll let you all know about it and provide them with the appropriate recognition. But just great activity all the way around.
Great job.
Did I suggest a press release on that too?
We're working on that. We want to serve ample. That's part of our plan, just because again, it was just great. And Fire has said, their initial assessment is that if not for their action, we probably would have had a very different outcome.
Anything else on pros? Okay, thank you very much. Planning and Development Services?
Okay, Planning and Development Services also does not have any amendments. As mentioned in the Tuesday meeting last week, we did make some adjustments for our Development Review Fund due to a reduction in funds available. And so we have just shifted positions between funds. So what you see in the budget book is a reference to one planning manager moving out from the Development Review Fund to the general fund. So I just wanted to note that amendment. And we have Janine Rustad here to answer any questions.
So the Development Review Fund is fee-based, right?
Correct.
And now you're moving that position to the general fund.
Correct.
It is that position. It's kind of, I will tell you, it's a historical thing that's been there for a while. That position is actually not directly involved in review of development applications. Okay. And so it's something that I think in the past we've kind of squinted at it. But I will tell you that from a fee basis, it is something that really is not directly doing development review.
So it's not consistently taken. Okay, good. All right. Further questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember Marcon.
Thank you. I keep hearing from folks who have applications before the city that the process is improving, but it's still fairly slow. And I guess I just want to get a yes or no answer from you. Is 29 folks in planning enough?
We have not done a staffing analysis around FTEs. As a reminder, we augment our staff with contracted services.
Yeah.
So that helps with the ebb and flow of the development review process as applications go up. Certainly we look to contracted resources to help us with that through the Development Review Fund.
I will say that I did work with Janine, and probably gonna cue you up on this. One of the problems we had, similar to some of the discussions we had earlier in the morning, were we were not fully staffed for the positions we were authorized. And so Janine and her staff had a very concerted effort to get fully staffed. And I think we are there or almost there. And you want to go give us a quick update on that?
Yes. The good news is the supervisors for the current planning, the development review, those positions are filled. They were crucial to help manage the junior level staff. We had 3 senior planner positions. 2 we downgraded because after a year we couldn't fill them. So we downgraded them. We're working with staff to grow them. It gives career progression also. The good news is 2 of those positions will be starting in October, leaving us with 1 senior planner. We're trying to hold the line there because we do need that senior person to help the supervisors with this. And also, it is a partnership with development review. It's not just the planners. We're working better and more efficiently with our partners in Public Works and ODA and PROS. So it's a process of improvements, not. Is that it?
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Combs.
So Janine, I know that you all also had previously kind of some churn that was resulting in a lot of inefficiencies. How has the turnover been in addition to just the current staffing levels?
I think that has stabilized. I would look to Ryan Lance to verify that. But right now, we're losing a few people to retirement, but that's a good thing. These are people that have been with the city for a very long time. But it does appear to have stabilized.
Very well. Any other questions or comments? Public Works.
Okay, for the Public Works budget, there are no amendments proposed for that budget.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Questions for Public Works?
Mayor.
Councilmember Connor.
Not actually a question for Public Works, but I do want to see if we can get something on the board. And this is actually one of the asks that I had brought last year for our budgeting session. And that's, at the time, it was $325,000 for filling a sidewalk gap near the Bella Vita Senior Center over on Florida by Best Gardens. The concern there is that there's a lot of the residents in that community, they depend on wheelchairs, walkers, and other mobility aids. They don't have a sidewalk, so they currently have to cross Florida, then cross Florida again, then cross Havana. And y'all know Havana is very dangerous. We just had another fatality there yesterday. We had another one, I think, just a few days beforehand.
51 now.
52, I think, citywide. Yeah, this year. Actually, I don't think we're even counting those yet. So, yeah. So I'd like to put that on the board.
Okay, Laura, what is the process for getting to our side? How is that? Or does it?
Cindy Crowd, can you?
Because of budget considerations, as we've been applying for a lot of Dr. Cog funding, we've been very successful with that. The issue or challenge with the Bella Vita is that we're going to have to install retaining walls and drainage improvements because of the constraints of the site and the grading. So that one has not risen to the top yet with the Dr. Cog application, but we could, if budget is allocated, we could start that design and get that construction going.
Are we out of the ADA compliance right now?
In that area, yes.
Oh, yeah. Further questions or discussion? Who is in support?
Coombs.
325.
And I will say we do have $1.3 million of one-time funds that we still haven't allocated. So.
Okay. Enough of prison. Okay, so put on the board, please. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, so that's, any other questions for Laura's group? And I guess just, yeah, so any other questions for those departments? All right, seeing none, then we will jump into the public safety departments. And so give us a second to swap out. Hopefully they can hear me out in the lobby. We'll ask Tina and the chiefs to come on in.
So time is 9:45. We'll reconvene at 9:50.
allocation according to me. So we'll start with Tina and the Aurora 911 group. Oh, and I'm sorry, quick update. Jessica has confirmed the pig is resting comfortably. So there we go. So that is confirmed. Can we get a pig cam? I was telling her we're gonna do a pig naming and a pig cam, but those are, you know.
It's either pork chop or bacon.
Good morning, everyone.
Well,
you know, we love the cases as much as people. We are committed to serve them all equally. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the FTE. I know that you see a list of vacancies there, but I'm very happy to report that all of the non-line level positions have been filled, and we're in the final process for approach for our October Academy. We still have 20 individuals in backgrounds, and they're just now starting to trickle through. But if we hire 9, we'll be at authorized FTE, and if we hire more, we'll be creating over-hire positions to support our operations. So just wanted to let you know, like, this is the first time in over a decade that we've been in this place, and we're just very excited to be able to share that information with you.
Questions of Emergency Communications?
That's great news, Tina.
Questions, comments? Thanks.
We'll go over to Chief Lawton and Fire. So this is his first budget experience here. So welcome, Chief, and the floor is yours. That's right.
Let's make it unforgettable.
Appreciate it, Mayor. Thank you so much. I think we've all had a chance to look at the budget, and I know that the manager did a presentation on our budget this year. It does show growth of net of 17 FTEs in the proposed budget, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you might have about our budget.
Questions for the chief?
Mayor?
Councilmember Blume.
Thank you. So Chief, I know in the past you all had been relying pretty heavily on mandatory overtime due to some staffing issues. Is that ongoing, and how are you trying to address that issue?
We will still encounter days where we need to hire voluntary overtime. I'm aware in the past month of maybe 2 or 3 occasions where we've had to pull a mandatory overtime. We're currently +2, so we are overhired by 2 positions. The challenge is it takes us about 20 weeks to get those people through the academy. So 16 of those are currently in the academy. So you have some vacancies in the field until those people get trained up. The manager gave us the ability to do some overhiring to anticipate attrition. And so that's been really helpful to keep us positive. Those recruits will graduate in November. So that approach has been going really well. We've also had a conversation about hiring an academy of 30 on February 5th, and about 15 of those will be overhires in anticipation of attrition so that we can keep up with it. We've also committed to doing 2 academies a year. And what we feel like that won't allow us, in the past we've been doing 1, which allows you to get in a pretty big hole that you've got to dig out of. And so the 2 academies a year will kind of keep that at a more level pace. And I think we'll keep our staffing in the field in a much healthier place. Did that answer your question, ma'am?
You want to talk a little bit about how the 12
thank
you're
you.
hiring are going to help with some of the overtime in terms of that piece too?
Sure. So 12 of the positions that are in your budget book are listed as training backfill. And one of the challenges that I recognized when I came here was that we weren't doing academy style programming. The previous fire chief had decentralized a lot of the training programs and pushed them out to the field, and was leaving our members on the line while they were going to things like paramedic school. So they would work a 24-hour shift, leave that shift, go to school for 8 hours, leave school for 8 hours, go to clinicals, then come back to work the following day. And it was costing about $50,000 per member in overtime a year, and really creating an imbalance, right? I think you're on work time. We need you intensely focused on the work, but we also need you intensely focused on your family and your home life on your off days. And I think that's what allows people to be in good balance, mentally and physically. And so these 12 positions will allow us to recentralize a lot of our core training programs: acting engineer, acting officer, paramedic, and pull those folks off the line, put them in an academy to teach that information, and then return them back to the line while we're staffing people in the stations.
Good. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
I believe it was last year, perhaps the year before, council allotted $8 million of ARPA money for station upgrades. Can you give us an update on where we're at on spending some of that money?
So I understand the fencing project is underway, and I may just look over here at Matthew just to get a most current update. We've got fences that are underway. That project is a little further behind because I understand there was more details associated with as far as electrical systems, because we had to put card readers and those kinds of things on. So that's gone a little bit slower than I think facilities had anticipated. The Station 9 project is also a pretty big deal right now. We found some poor compaction of soils that was causing some foundational issues. And so you saw a proposal to add some money to that project, and we're going to do a scrape and a rebuild on that station as opposed to doing a renovation. And that was at the recommendation of the architects and engineers. And we'll continue.
Yeah, we've got Ellie Watson, who's managing all these projects online as well, if there's any further questions or you need some support.
Was that helpful?
Yeah. Could we get maybe afterwards a summary of kind of the allotted money and what we have on the roadmap? Because I guess, I mean, fencing and some of that stuff is great, but I know when we had that conversation and you know, some of that, what I've seen on station tours, you know, sheets over doors and black mold and failing HVAC systems. And I want to make sure that we're allocating that money to things that are actually beneficial for our firefighters, not fencing. And, you know, it needs to be actual upgrades that are going to benefit our firefighters. So maybe, I don't know if that would come from Public Works or what, but.
We have to look into that, yeah. Ellie's got good by station information. We can kind of tell you what's been ordered and get you some details.
I want to make sure that it helps our people, not.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
Further questions or comments on rural fire rescue? Seeing none, thanks, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
We can skip police, going to.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
All right. It's kind of tough to get the chief up in front of the crowd. He's kind of shy.
He's very shy.
Right.
Hey, I spent 3 hours getting yelled at the other day.
That's right, there you go.
I could use a hug. Yeah. Wellness is.
Was that your meeting with Danielle?
That was long.
Dustin said that.
So.
That's not even funny.
So we do have a number of ads in police. We went over those. Chief's here for questions on those, and then to give you any other updates you all have in terms of questions.
And I just want to let you know where we're at. We have 748 authorized for sworn, which is remaining because we still have vacancies. We have 60 as of today. We have 60 hard vacancies, 46 in the training. So the good news is.
Over 100 folks not functioning to provide service, so 60 real vacancies.
Walking wounded, which I don't have on the top of my head. The good news is though that thanks to the new process, we're really hopeful that we're going to be able to get some really large classes. Our first class that we put together as a city, being able to leverage all of our resources was 33 started, 31 remain, 2 didn't quite make it the first week. It's not for everybody. And then 2 others actually are, so we really had 35 for this class, but 2 waived and we'll start in January. We'll have a January class, basic class, a February lateral, a June basic, and July lateral. And that can be adjusted based on the recommendations of HR. But really want to thank Ryan and his team and Sarah that's working.
When do you anticipate in January?
Yeah. I hope to have 30 to 35. The numbers are looking good right now. I think our recruitment strategies with having our quarterly sessions for women, because we went to 30 by 30 to increase our female participation in the department. It's really having an impact. Our monthly meetings we have at the academy for the PT test and get people ready is really having, people are actually showing up. So it's exciting. I think part of that is that we're changing the narrative a little bit. We're trying to see more positive media, and I think that's as a result of, I actually meet with the station directors quarterly. I've had 2 or 3 meetings with them already since I've been here. We put our cards on the table, and I think those relationships are getting better, and they're actually putting out some positive stories, and that's helpful. And then the last thing I was just say that, I don't know if I want to volunteer, but we are budgeting for $4 million in overtime, and unfortunately, because of, the shortages and we want to maintain our service levels, we are projecting about $10 million in overtime this year. That it's really tough.
Yeah, Councilor Lawson.
Chief, I just have a question, and I'm just bringing this up, and I'm not your law enforcement expert, but I was just wondering, in terms of the street racing thing, have you guys actually thought about drone technology to maybe utilize that as a way to, especially just maybe with the street racing?
Yeah, we are.
I was just curious. I know, don't we have some drones?
We do. That's a quick question. The challenge with drone technology is you have to have line of sight.
Okay.
So while we have been using them to gather the intelligence when we know there's going to be, but once they take off and they start going down 225 to 125 miles per hour.
Okay.
Now, let me just say this though, our operations, we are working with our regional partners, and we've actually been catching people. And gathering some really good intelligence. One of the things that I've told the folks that I really want to work on is trying to do a conspiracy thing, especially in an event where somebody gets killed. And so we are working on it. People think we're not, but we are, and we're actually making
I just think that that's a good resource, drones,
It
for
is.
just even some police stuff. I don't know how many you have.
And we are using it, Councilman. We are using the drones, except we can only use it where they're gathering, and once they take off, just can't do it. We don't have those type.
All right, just
Now, we
curious
have
on
all those
that.
predators from the military. We can follow them anywhere.
I was just curious.
That might take up our entire city.
Targeting. Okay, further questions or
I have a
comments?
question. How many of those cameras do we have that we're using to try and watch out for businesses that we're setting up on different, like the one you brought over to JJ's?
Oh,
6.
we have, well, those are the towers. We have other cameras. Oh, sorry. I'll get you the number. But we do have a number of cameras, different platforms. The towers, I think we have 6 now, but those are not, they're not like undercover cameras, right? Those are, we want people to know they're there, so it'll have hopefully a deterrent effect. We have 6 of the towers that we're using, but we have many more of those other cameras that are covert cameras that we put up across the city. I know that our mesh camera system is starting to increase. I'm excited. I just talked to Scott outside. I told him our #1 priority is crime fighting. FUSIS that you all approved recently, which is basically the ability to maybe pursue bad actors right after a crime occurs. Everything's done. Now we just have to do the work to deploy the system. And I just told Scott and his team that that's our number one. I don't care what my staff tells you. That's my #1 priority. More than Spider Tech. Spider Tech's gonna be great to build trust because it's kind of a customer service tool. But the #1 thing we can do is reduce crime, especially violent crime, for the community. That'll help us. We had that double murder recently. I met with the families yesterday, and it's African-American family. And a lot of times people don't think that we care about their community. And I wanted to actually meet with them and tell them that we do care. And once we get pieces up and running, I think that'll help us even solve that case. But we need to get it up and running before stuff starts disappearing. And maybe the private sector might have.
Further questions or comments?
So we didn't have a chance to meet last week, but I wanted to ask you then, so I'll just ask you now. I've heard from some officers that, obviously PAR is a challenge because we're pulling folks off onto patrol, but that there might be an opportunity maybe to find a way to get civilians to help with PAR. And I think that's potentially an additional pipeline for recruitment.
Yeah.
Is that something you've considered? And is that something you'd be able to?
We haven't started that yet, but you'll notice that in our budget ask this year, we're doing a lot of, we have about 18 new positions rather than adding police officers this year because we have 60 vacancies. You can't hire when you can't get in the pipeline. I don't have a problem. But if you think about our Office of Community, our community liaisons, that they're in essence, they're part of that kind of community policing strategy to go out and build that relationship. So that's something we could look at in subsequent. I think that this time we probably too late. this pretty this year, but we can look at it. But the 18 positions that we're civilianizing, I think is, a lot of them are being civilianized. I think it's going to be huge. Put the police officers back to crime fighting. And then we have continuity of service in terms of that specific discipline, which I think will be good. The only bad thing is depending on who we hire and how much experience they have, I just hope we don't start getting civilians that we end up training for the private sector. Because like cybersecurity is probably the number one growing field. I'm just hopeful. I'm going to keep a real eye on that because we want to make sure that we get content with the private sector in terms of salaries.
Councilmember Sundberg.
Just about a year ago, Chief, we approved $300,000 more radar guns in patrol cars. Was that implemented? And
We did go out and purchase them. The challenge is, when it comes to actual using the radar guns, you've got to have the bandwidth in terms of patrol time. And so I don't think we're using as much as we should. I will say that the new systems, the vans that you all buy.
They don't work.
Yeah, right.
I race past those things all the time.
He got one, already.
Yeah, I heard.
I did not. I said I thought I was
Testing the system. No, actually, it actually came up double fine for you. I don't know what happened.
I honestly tested. I speed pass it intentionally.
I remember doing that.
That'll be the excuse when you get the ticket, right?
I was testing.
So they don't help.
Yeah, totally. Somebody, I think it was from Francois or somebody sent an email and then we put one out the next day. Like I always tell people that, when you complain about traffic, when we put out the fishermen, sometimes we get sharks and sometimes we get the dolphin. Don't be the dolphin acting like a shark. They complain. I live here is not going to be a defense.
Okay. Further questions or comments?
Oh.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Great. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. So the last one, and I just gonna cover this. So general management. So general management is kind of a collection of some of our smaller offices. We did want to take the opportunity if you guys have questions. So this is, it's on page F60 if you want to look at it, but that's the clerk, intergovernmental relations, the city manager's office, development assistant. So those are there. Any questions on those, smaller operations that we've got in general management? Yes.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about OIA. We're a city of almost 400,000 people. We have 2 people in that office. I know we had a grant-funded part-time employee that helped increase capacity to go after more grants and provide more programming for the community. Why is it that we are only still proposing just 2 people for that? I feel like we really need to invest more in that, especially given the demographic.
Ricardo's office,
So the idea and the concept when we created that office to stand up was that we would create it in the city manager's office, but it would be contingent on working with departments to multiply their effect, right? Okay. So the strategy is that it's organized around pros and the activities they're doing, or public works, or another department to partner with them to multiply. While we have somebody that's devoted to it, then Sue and Ricardo, the idea is to work through the Immigrant Refugee Commission plus the departments to multiply their efforts. So I'll give you a case in point, the library. They're doing a ton of stuff, a ton of activity, outreach. They're working closely with Ricardo's office on partnership, Dia de los Muertos events, citizenship events. So the idea is to not grow that department, but simply use the resources and help the existing departments to say, have you thought about this program? Have you thought about doing more outreach to these communities, whether you're in the library, whether you're doing APD and recruitment in their academies, the citizen academies? So that's the strategy that we've used, partly because we want to encourage the departments to do that rather than putting it on the Office of International Immigrant Affairs to take it over. It's more in a sense to integrate it into the work of the departments rather than creating additional employees to handle what we think should be something top of mind for our departments.
I don't want to speak for the chief, but I know that to your point, Roberto, I think Ricardo and Minsu really helped set up some meetings recently with the chief and some of our immigrant communities, and it was really effective. And I think the chief, exactly to your point, was like, yes, more please. And so I think it's been a good, successful partnership.
Good. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that.
Okay, further questions or comments?
Okay, so if there's no questions on those, we'll turn over to Marshall. He's going to go over both water and human resources. So go ahead. You want to take one, you do water, and I'll go grab.
Cats.
All right, good. Okay.
Okay, so, first water, water, we don't have any new ads intentional, which means, we do have an increase in our operating costs and in regulatory requirements. So if you look at the detail in the budget book, you'll see a lot of increases showing up for those regulatory requirements and for our cost increases like chemicals, et cetera. We do have scheduled on the 16th of October, a study session to review rates and fees, the detail behind the rates and fees, and obviously take any questions, have any discussion you would like then, but also happy to take any questions about anything in the budget that you're seeing an increase in today. Again, no new FTEs. We're figuring out how to accommodate the regulatory enhancements and the increased operational costs in other ways other than adding FTEs. But there are some, our overall operating budget is going up by 10% due to all of those cost drivers. So I guess any questions on anything specifically in the budget? And again, reminder, we will have time set aside on the 16th of the study session to go over this as well.
Questions for Marshall? Seeing none, thank you, Marshall. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Okay, human resources. So the human resources part of the budget, over the last year or two, we have made some adjustments and enhancements in human resources. Those aren't new ads for the 2024 budget, but the 2024 budget does formalize some of the enhancements or changes in HR over the last little while. The only thing I guess I would highlight in addition to that, there is a little bit of additional money built into the budget for training of all city employees that will be, again, based in the HR budget, but implemented through city department activities, training activities. So with that, Ryan is here to take any additional questions on HR.
Yeah, and maybe that's what you were just referring to, Marshall. So we've obviously transitioned civil service hiring and quite a few other things. So is that, we formalized kind of that transition? Do we have enough resources for that?
I'm going to defer to Ryan on the resource question.
Because we've shifted a lot over to human resources over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the big initiatives that we're working on this year is that transition of a new division. It's what we call Human Resources Public Safety Support. So it does support all the initiatives for the entry-level police hiring and fire. So we're supporting APD, AFR, Aurora 911, and a little and detentions when it comes to the recruiting process. In terms of resourcing, we're still trying to figure it out. It's first year. We have had some resources added to HR. We're really assessing it. So one thing that was talked about a little bit earlier is the background process. How many background investigators do we really need to do to support that big of a group? So we're really focusing on data analysis, and we'll probably come back to say, this is how many more or less that we need.
Okay, thank you.
Questions of Brian or Marshall? See, thank you very much. Greg Hayes.
Greg Hayes. Hello, everyone. First up for me is going to be City Council. No ads, no amendments for you. And by the way, CU is already down 7. Want you to know. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
All right, thank you. All right, City Council, no amendments. You do still have some of the one-time money left that was in the 2023 budget that was talked about. You've got $1.255 million. I have the list that you made before if you want to look through that and start that process again. Any questions about City Council?
Questions about City Council?
I have a question.
Councilman Jaworski.
Yeah, so for 2023 out of our council contingency fund, how much of that did we use?
You used about 1.4. You've got 1.225 left of that 2.7 million.
Okay, I guess, and I'm talking about this.
Oh, the 16,000?
Yeah.
Do you know how much is left? Is not it? I don't think you spent much.
Give us a second. We'll kind of pull that up. I don't know if we can get into one solution. Give us a minute. We'll pull that up for you.
01003. Do you have any questions while we're waiting for that?
And just I guess while we're on that, so just so we're clear, we put aside about, I think that's $60,000 number for council. We call a contingency in case you all have different things during the year that you'd like to see addressed. They're kind of in that smaller number. In addition to that contingency, there are a number of kind of standing items that come forward to you all every single year. So those are listed in the budget. We can kind of show you that if you want it, but those are just different things like, I think we have a line item in there for, the APS luncheon, for the Veterans Affairs, for the Veterans Salute. So just those things that we know you all want to do every year, they're listed. And so those are there. And typically, we don't come to you all when that bill comes in and somebody says, hey, it's time for you to get your table at the Veterans Salute or at the Arapahoe County Fair event. We just, since it's already in the budget, we just pay that invoice. If something comes in that's not in that detail, that's when you all get that email request saying, hey, we've had a request to buy a table at whatever it is. And then we look for 6 of you all to say, yeah, let's do that.
And so right now, there's 13,500. I do not know if it includes, there was just a request for table just this week.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't know whether that's already been spent or not. So it's somewhere around 13,000.
Further questions?
We have allocated for each council member on a monthly basis, travel and expenditures. I don't think a lot of that is used too often. Does that grow into a pot that's growing larger all the time?
It grows into a pot and gets given to the council members in a supplemental.
Doesn't it expire after, doesn't carry on forever, right?
What happens to it?
It keeps rolling until you're not there anymore, and then it'll come on.
Further questions?
You guys change the rules.
Okay.
Greg, will Highline Cal sponsorship has hit in the number that I gave you.
Okay. Further questions on city council? Okay, then non-departmental.
All right, non-departmental is in here, page F108. Non-departmental is really more of a technical, sits in about every fund and just does basically the transfers, anything else. A couple of ads in there, technical ads associated with like balancing the development review, but we also put training in pretty much every fund that has a person. We put a little training budget in. It's one of the things that kind of went by the wayside during COVID and before that, is training dollars. And so we're putting just a small pittance in each department. And what will happen next year is that we'll move it out from non-departmental and into the departments. So, any questions for non-departmental?
Further questions? Councilmember Summer.
I feel like I didn't get much of a specific, how much money is out there with the revolving council?
So annual, it's I think $7,000 per council member.
And 11
for the mayor.
For the mayor.
And then I guess
Because the mayor needs more training, is that?
It's the council rules. That's the number that's given to us.
The number that was given.
And then looking over there at our staff,
Would you look at the last supplemental, the spring supplemental? I think that we did a spring supplemental moving about 60,000.
And that's what we're trying to pull. We're trying to pull the like how
Does it
much
keep growing or
it does. So
As long as we're on council, it grows, and then when we leave, my understanding is it just gets sent back to the general fund. And then you could think of it, it just gets recycled to the next person that has to see
Yeah,
it.
So it's an $81,000 annual number, and then 81,000, so that's 7,000 per, and then 11, so 81,000 total for council. And then let's say that collectively, you all spend 50,000, that 31,000 that's not spent is reappropriated the following year. So you have the 81 of that new year, plus the 31 carry forward. So we're gonna try and get you a number here as to how much the total.
The spring supplemental was 77,000, which is several years of carrying forward.
Thank you.
Okay, on the well, anything else on city council, since we're revisiting? Non-departmental, is there anything else?
No.
Non-departmental?
Nope. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Great. I'm gonna.
Yeah, Greg, you want to give a quick update? So this is on so that's, I guess, let's pause right there real quick. So that's the look at the departmental level. Did we miss anything? Not talk about anything that anybody was expecting to talk about sort of at a departmental level? The next item is really to go to sort of the capital projects funds and see if there's any questions on any other funds. That's sort of just a catch all we do.
Open it up for anything.
We technically done the entire budget because we've gone by department, so that covers everybody. But then we'll just kind of relook at it and slice it a different way and look at it by fund. So, but any departmental operating budget questions? Not seeing any. Then the next one we would do is we would go to the capital projects fund. And so again, Greg, give me the page on that again. The details on that is.
Your capital program is actually section G. Capital projects fund specifically, there's a breakout on page G13.
So that kind of starts in terms of the capital projects fund. So we'll take any questions you have on changes to that, things that are in there, not in there. We'll be happy to answer any questions you all have in terms of the capital projects fund. Greg, anything else to add on CPF?
No.
Any further questions?
Good question, Mayor.
Councilmember.
What is the current balance that we have available in ARPA funds? And this is related to capital. I just want to have an idea.
So we're 6 million, 6.8?
million. Okay. And when is the date by which we have to have them allocated or spent?
2024?
Or by 2026 spent?
I think it has to be spent by 2026. Yep, out the door.
Are there, so this goes to the question on this, Jason or whomever, are there capital projects that are needed that we could allocate ARPA funds for in the short term that have high priorities?
Yeah, so I think what we've been talking about internally is we're trying to do that accounting on that. That 6.8 is the current number we've got. We're planning to come to council at some point here in the future, come back to you to kind of lay that out. We would tell you that right now we are tracking a few major projects I think that hopefully council's aware of. So as you know, we did get the award from the state on the navigation campus. So we got a little bit less award than we'd asked for. So we're now working to how to fill that. Part of the potential to fill that gap is to look to some of those ARPA funds. As you heard Jessica and Roberto talk about, we are working through improvements on the animal shelter. And so we are kind of doing the design. We do have ARPA funds that are committed to that, but that's an area that we may need additional funds on. The other one that we know we're going to need funds on, as you heard Councilmember Gardner asked about, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner asked about, Fire Station 9. So we had a small amount there where we were trying to do a renovation on. We know we're going to need, I think at this point, our estimate's probably an additional $3 million, give or take, on Fire Station 9. So that's another ARPA project that probably needs some additional funding. And I think that's
9 Mile.
9 Mile pedestrian bridge.
Councilmember Combs.
I was gonna say 9 Mile pedestrian bridge, but I also had a question for Greg, which is, I know before we had the discussion of a lot of the money that we got for ARPA ended up going into a fund that was for revenue replacement. Are we at a point where we still have that flexibility by classifying funds as revenue replacement, or are we at the point where we have to specifically spend it on certain specific ARPA categories?
I would say we used some revenue replacement to get us through, COVID times. And so the general fund, we're back to balancing. I think theoretically, I'm going to look at Jason. I think you could just take the money and just toss it over in the general fund, but then it's not for.
I have to look. I'm trying to remember between CARES and ARPA, what was revenue? I don't remember off the top of my head which one was revenue replacement and which one was.
Yeah, I think we would probably just come back with those types of ideas when we bring back the ARPA funds for discussion.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, further discussion?
So yes, I guess to your question, sir, those are, I guess, the 4 projects that we talked about. So navigation campus, Fire Station 9, animal shelter, and the 9 Mile pedestrian bridge. So those are the 4 things I think that we would, as a staff, are tracking at this point. I'm looking around to Laura, Roberto, anything else?
There are a few parks projects that have been allocated across all of the boards. Certainly, obviously, aside from deficits in projects, if there's an opportunity to do more while we're there, there's obviously cost and delivery efficiencies with that. So there's about 1.4 million that we could do in those existing parks to add additional amenities that we could bid as ad alternates in the procurement of those.
How short are we on for the navigation center? About 5.5?
We requested 22, we got 15, so there's 7 million there.
15 or 16.5?
I guess it's almost 16, so yeah, probably, so it's worth 6 and a bit over, short.
Right, and a lot of that will depend on the kind of phasing and design work. So while it is short of what the state, I think we can right-size it to do that if we can find additional funds.
Okay.
Just a point, meanwhile, there's been some pretty drastic construction costs, material costs since we first came with those numbers.
And that's one of the things that on all of our projects right now, when we talk about deficits, we're typically talking about off of engineering estimates, right? And some of those are further along than others. Some of them we're doing estimates off of preliminary. Some of them we're doing off of 60% design. So and again, exactly to your point, sir, that can change actually up or down, right? Like bidding a project now is probably better than it was probably 12 months ago, but it may be different a month or 2 months from now. The construction continues to be relatively volatile.
Okay, and we just thought, because Member Monica and I would like to take a look at those designs before we put them out. Further questions or comments?
Designed on specifically
to make sure it fits the top program that we're looking at.
The homeless navigation. Okay, understood.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you. So I guess on that question, do we have any funding at all for staffing that project? Because we're just talking about capital here, and I know that we had not discussed any green staff.
Capital.
So that's the operating RFP that's been issued. So we, as a city, won't be administering or staffing it as much as the third party would. So their model needs to come back with an RFP that says, here's how we'll do that. And that dollar amount of how much we'll have to supplement to be able to pay for those operating can be covered both by the construction, but also just we'll have to come back with a conversation about what that's going to be. We don't know what that delta is going to be. It's the provider that comes and says, here's our model, here's how we do it, reversible.
And that's why Councilmember Monica and I need to take a second look at it, so because our intention is that the person, whoever, the nonprofit entity that wins the contract is responsible for raising.
I would just say part of, I hope, and because I haven't seen the RFP for the operator, that part of their responsibility would be to help fundraise. So that if there is a gap in this, that it's not going to just all fall on us. I assume that's in there, and if not, I would
Roberta can get us a copy of that so we can look at it.
Get it to you.
Further questions? Yeah, Councilmember Combs.
I think that needs to be clarified, because what I've heard from folks is that their impression was that the city would be giving no operating funds and that they are expected to raise all of it, and we're not going to get anyone that is capable of providing the service in that manner.
Thank you. Councilmember
And I also just want to
I was just going to add one thing on that. So with the award from the state, it's the 15.3 million. There's 35 housing vouchers attached to that, and then $130,000 of operational ongoing costs as well. And then obviously we've talked about before, and we're planning to come back to a study session in a few weeks when we get more information from the state. We have some HUD funding and things like that that are typically going to shelter that can only go to shelter that would transfer over to this. So there would be a portion of funding that we already have that would go to the operational pieces.
Okay, further questions or comments? Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, what's the timeline look like for discussing the outstanding capital projects to include the 9 Mile Bridge?
So I think our preference at this point is probably on some of these projects to get a little bit further advanced, again, given the volatility of the construction market, to get a little bit further in design, so we're not working off of preliminary engineering cost estimates that were a little bit further. And then ideally, if you all are comfortable with that, what we would do is we'd actually potentially go out for bids and come to you and say, hey, we've got the bids in, this is the gap we need to close. And I think to the point there, if you're willing to identify that ARPA balance and some of these other things, that gives us a source to come back to you and say, hey, here's where we're at in terms of these projects, and this is what the gap is, and we've got this funding source available. So if that's okay to council, that's how we'd like to progress, because I will say that coming forward to you now and say, hey, if you give us $3 million on Fire Station 9, I'm absolutely going to get it done.
You don't want to come back and be like,
I'm a little nervous to tell you that, if you guys say Chief Lawton looks really nice today in his uniform and he wins the lottery and we give him 3 million, I don't want to come back and say, oops, I need another 800,000 later.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is next year.
Okay.
Further questions, Jonathan? Okay, where are we at?
So that is it in terms of if there's no other on any other funds, I guess we do capital projects, anything else out there for questions? Hearing none, Mayor, I'd like to do is take a 15-minute break, let budget staff and us huddle. We'll come back and then we'll take up on the board there and kind of go through that piece.
Well, we convene at 10:45.
if we can't.
It's like. Thank you for the time to kind of visit on these things. So real quick, adjustment to one of the numbers, you'll see the cross out here on the board on that sidewalk. We went out, just kind of did a little bit more refining, and I'll let Cindy talk about why we adjusted that number from 325 to 410.
Yeah, so with the construction escalation that we've seen, we made an adjustment there, and I also added in 2 more curb ramps, because when I looked at it, it looks like those curb ramps also need to be adjusted, so that's the change.
So that number's up from that. So then, if we could, I'd like to take that one and then the probation pilot together. Those are both one time. So that is $563,000 of one-time funding. And what we would recommend is that you all have the $1,228,000 that we had set aside for you all this year. If you all are okay with that, that would be staff's recommendation, is to pull that out of that funding source. It's a one-time funding source. Those are both one-time projects. So we would kind of put those in that one. On the other request, the public defender's request, I know we talked about it as a $30,000, but just so we're clear, that's $104,000 ongoing costs. So that cost would fully hit in 2025 when the grant goes away. So that is effectively a $30,000, you could call it a one-time cost in 2024, but it's $104,000 ongoing. That position currently is a grant-funded variable hour, which is what that is. The VHPE stands for variable hour benefited employee, so it does have benefits. The $30,000 would take you in 2024. It would plus up the amount that we have in the grant for that to take it 40 hours a week. But then when the grant goes away in 2025, you will have $104,000 of ongoing costs. So we will have taken our gap in 2025 and added $104,000 to that. So you'll still be balanced in 2024, but you will have an added ongoing cost of $104,000. And I think the request is to, again, convert that variable hour contract employee to a full FTE. So that is the request. And then your public defender's asking to make a.
I just wanted to say the funding that we've been getting has been through the Colorado Competency Fines Committee. And it's not as though we're going to stop asking for renewal of the funds. So right now we've been getting funding since 2021, and the funding is split between us and Aurora Mental Health. So some of it is going to the contracted clinicians through Aurora Mental Health, and then we're also receiving funding to supplement the cost of competency evaluations. This position is also funded through them. We will continue to ask them for money to offset, but their hope, their program is designed to try and, support programs that can eventually sustain themselves. So I think it's not like we won't still ask. There may be some offset, but I obviously won't know that until that time comes. I just want to be clear, we're not going to stop asking.
Questions of the public defender? Councilmember Sabani.
So on this proposal, I would suggest that it's grant funded through 2025.
2024.
So through next year, that we continue to do it. I'm not opposed to doing something going forward, but I do think that until the RFP is back, we should hold off on moving forward. I am not under any illusion that the RFP might go out and it could come back, that the most beneficial and from a cost perspective is to keep the public defenders as it is. But I don't believe that will be the case. I could be wrong, but I want to see that RFP before we allocate more money to the office.
With regards to the public defender's office, can someone elaborate like what we're able to do there without going back to the voters? Because I know that was an initiative. I think it's either, I'm fairly certain that it was added. Was it a charter amendment?
No, actually, that's
just an
it's an ordinance.
Okay, so how does the commission then come into play?
Okay, you're asking.
Opening a can of worms.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cite your predecessor. This issue has been raised by a prior city attorney, that the charter is clear that there are 4 appointees. The ordinance establishes the Public Defenders Commission and has the Public Defenders Commission responsible for hiring the public defender. A prior city attorney had questioned the consistency with the charter requirement that there are 4 council appointees, and those 4 council appointees are responsible for all employees and operations within the city. So that if you raise the question, it is currently operating in an ordinance. It has been questioned in the past, and council chose not to take it to the ballot.
Further questions or comments? Let me just say, I think because the situation is undecided, given Councilmember Zvanek's resolution that obviously has to pass first, and then we have to wait for the results, should it pass, that we should continue on a contract basis until we have the results.
Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Cruz.
Can I recommend that we allocate the $30,000 to fully fund the position for 2024? Because this employee is going to see a lot more folks than they've been seeing. They will now be serving 2 courtrooms, 2 court divisions every day for the 2 in custody divisions where they're currently only seeing 1. So not saying it will become an FTE into the future, but at least that this person can work 40 hours a week to cover that extra in custody division. So it would be the one-time 30,000 that we still allocate that.
I guess I have a question for HR, and that is,
I'll field it.
And that is, can you take general fund dollars and appropriate it to a position and have that position be a contract position, even though you're only covering part of the cost?
You can, from a funding source standpoint. The question fundamentally is, I think we can certainly plus up the contract so that there's additional funding to keep it a contract. I think the request is to not only add additional funding to allow for 40 hours a week, but it would be also to take it to an FTE. And there's the question of the funding and then the FTE. Those are 2 separate questions, but yes, you can augment the contract with general fund to increase the hours.
Okay, I don't think it should be made an FTE at this time, but now further questions or comments as to the $30,000, the Councilmember Coon's request for the to make it a full-time contract position. Is there?
We voted on that earlier, didn't we?
No, so we put it on the board, so that at this point, yeah, so now we're at the point where we need 6 votes for you all to tell us to make it so. What we will do, I guess I should stop there. So yeah, we're at the point now where we need 6 votes. If you all tell us that there's 6 votes to do it, what happens is Greg will prepare an exhibit that will go forward in October when you all adopt the budget. And so we will do a few things. We will adjust the appropriations ordinance so that the appropriations higher to reflect the additional spending authority you all are giving us. So you'll see those ordinances change, and then Greg will prepare a 1-page summary that shows you these changes so that you take these changes with the proposed budget that I provided and staff provided, and then those 2 make sort of a whole. That's what you all are adopting.
Mayor.
Councilmember Cruz.
So just to add on to this, this is the only mental health professional besides the other grant-funded Aurora Mental Health position that is operating every day in our court. We have some folks that are contracted with the treatment courts, but we heard from our judges at the luncheon that the biggest issue they are all seeing in all divisions is mental health needs that are unmet. And this person does serve to support referrals for folks to Aurora Mental Health. So this is the only person doing that in the court right now. And I don't know if Judge Day is in the room right now and would concur that this is a benefit.
He's online. Judge Day? There?
So, Mayor.
Councilmember Jaworski.
So just to clarify, I think a few of us are okay with the $30,000
one time, but are not okay with the ongoing and creating an FTE. So I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're voting on.
I've got Judge Day coming in. We've,
Okay.
coming in.
I think we probably,
Let's walk up.
um,
He's right behind me.
I didn't hear the walk-up music.
I know, it's right, there we go.
We were at the other end of the building. Hard to hear out there.
Judge Day, Councilmember Sundberg and I have been communicating with you about the creation of a court for low-level homeless offenses. And so we are now talking about a position that is with the public defender that would make their mental health professional, which is contract now, a full-time contract. Is the demand for that there with the creation of this court, does that enhance the need for a full-time position?
Well, I would defer to the collective thought of the full council. Just as Councilmember Coombs said, I think one of the big concerns that our court is seeing on a daily basis is the increased amount of people who are dealing with mental health issues that are finding themselves in court, in justice-involved people. The position that is currently part of the public defender's office only deals with people who are in custody. Just as I said earlier, with the change in the law, that there will be more people that will be required to remain in custody until they see a judge for protective orders to be considered in their case. There will be more people in custody. So for that person, as they are being utilized right now by the public defender's office, and again, this is their employee, this is their grant-funded employee, they decide, because they dedicated it to the in-custody people, that's where they're going to put that resource. Will there be more people in custody starting in January? There will be more people who will be in custody in January.
Okay, well, then let me ask, well, for any questions of the public defender or Judge Day, I think we have probably the support for it. All those can identify if you're in support of the $30,000 contract. Adding $30,000, just $30,000 to make it a full-time position.
Wait, sorry.
What?
So are we going to have the rest of the conversation? And sorry, Councilmember Marcano, I think you were going to say something.
No,
so
go ahead.
pretty-
Councilmember Coombs.
Just right, this is still a city department right now. And I would hope, well, I'm pretty certain that it's going to come back that it would cost us a lot more to contract out than to not. But as long as they are a city department, I don't think we should be treating them like they're not, or that they're not going to be. And if it was the case that we decided to contract out the entire public defender's office, all the employees there, that would also include this person, right? This person is an employee that's operating and providing a vital resource to the court. Again, at this time, the only mental health professional that is full-time in the court. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't look at both, because if we have to contract out the whole office, they're still going to need someone providing that service, and that would need to be contracted as well.
Okay, but that's not an additional proposal. That's a discussion for another day, I think.
No, that was the proposal that's on the board. I'm sorry.
The $30,000. What we've done is there is support for the $30,000 contract person that will be under the public defender's office. So that's the vote. The support is there for that. Okay.
Well, did we just bifurcate that ask though? So should we still have a vote for the ongoing piece? Because I didn't understand it.
Ongoing piece, I'm not sure.
The 104 ongoing started.
Yeah, there's two components to that. So we split it because some people didn't want to support both. So can we just have the second vote?
Can you explain the ongoing?
It's just that the request was to convert somebody that's a 30-hour VHPE to a 40-hour FTE. It's just that.
That's the 30,000.
That next year, that will only cost us $30,000, but that particular position is estimated to cost as a full-time FTE or as an FTE 40-hour employee, $104,000 ongoing.
If we chose not to.
That's without the grant, though.
Right, without the
We'll
grant.
be able
So-
to apply, and we've gotten it for the last 4 years.
So it's funded through next year,
Right.
right?
Yeah, it's just a full-time, I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself.
So, no, so.
Wait, so I think, sorry,
Sorry.
Mayor, can I just weigh in? I think part of the issue, right, is that we have a person who's working 30 hours a week, doing an incredible amount of work for the entire court. By converting that person to an FTE, what we're saying to him is, we see the extent of your work, we see the value of your work, and we see the value of continuing to have you as an employee, not someone that's constantly strung along, is this grant going to happen or not every single year? So I think that's the piece that's missing from a retention and valuing our employees standpoint, is that we're saying we value the work that you do. So I do think that there's value in doing both.
Okay. Is there, who is in favor of making it a permanent FTE? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, not enough of, where is it? 4? Okay, then that's not gonna pass. Let's see, what is our next?
So with that, I think then you can either take these separately or as a collective. I think there was enough votes to make the $30,000 that for just 2024, so we'll treat that as one time. There remain the 2 questions, the 153 for additional funding for the probation pilot, and then the 410 for the sidewalk gap. So you can either take those separately or together. Again, our staff recommendation is to take those out of the set aside we had for council this year. It comes with the one-time money.
Let's take them.
Mayor?
Is there any objection to taking them separately?
I object.
Yes, I object as well. I think that we should look at taking the cost of the probation pilot out of the court administration savings. There's 20 vacant FTEs, one of which is over $100,000, has been vacant all year long. Actually, there's more than that, but one that didn't have an explanation for why it's been vacant for an entire year, plus several $86,000 positions that have been vacant since March and additional that have been vacant since June. So I think there's enough money in that vacancy savings to cover that cost one time.
You know, I'm not comfortable with that because I just don't think there was enough clarity in the explanation as to how many vacancies there actually were. Because you said some people got promoted and things like that.
21 vacancies as of this morning.
But there
20.
There was explanations that some of them are going away, some of them are being held to, there was. And can we get the court administrator in here, please, to run with us?
And I believe that we will need to open up the next level, the upper level of the court.
Remember last year when it was about the DEI office, it was, there's no struggle to make it there. At least we can have some consistency.
Sorry, I missed the last 30 seconds.
So there's a proposal before us to take the $153,000 that would be dedicated to the probation pilot program, to take that as a vacancy savings from detention. Is it detention or detention?
So it's a combination.
From court administration.
So court administration, which would include detention. I have a response to that.
Well, I'm assuming you're estimating that I'll have $153,000 of, in addition to what's already taken out for vacancy savings in the 2024 budget. Like I said, it's our intent to fully fill every position in detention so that we can open up the detention facility. If we don't, we're looking at maybe not doing transports so that if anybody is arrested, not on a municipal level, we have to be transported by the officers to that county instead of us doing that. We'll have to look at changes like that to be able to compensate having less employees in detention, because they can't continue at the rate of overtime that they're doing currently. It's just not sustainable.
I would encourage a no vote. Councilmember McConnell.
So I completely agree with you. We need to fill these positions. But what I'm saying is that based off the information I was given here from Workday, you have had some of these vacancies for well over a year. So are you telling us that you have spent every penny you had in vacancy savings?
This year, like I said, we have plans to do that currently because of the majority, the big part is the $50,000 in detention to renovate it so that we can do 2 courtrooms. And so I will not have $153,000 extra at this time that I'm planning on at the end of this budget year.
So are you expecting to fill all of these positions January 1 of next year? I mean, but that's part of the thing that I'm having a hard time understanding, because I am happy to hear that you want to fill every one of these vacancies. I want these filled too. But realistically, you're not going to hire 20 people in the first quarter of next year. If you break this down quarterly, you will have orders of magnitude more than that in vacancy savings. I understand that there are capital expenses you want to address. I would rather see those actually itemized in the capital budget, portion of the budget, as opposed to just coming out of vacancy savings, because that's maybe part of where this, but wait, is coming from. That said, that's more than enough money to fill this probation pilot. So I'm not seeing where's the disconnect?
It's our intention to have the positions in detention filled before the end of this year. I mean, most of them have already been interviewed. They have conditional job offers out. We're just waiting for the final word from HR that they're approved to go forward and to get a start date. We have no intention of hitting January 1st with 20 vacancies.
Further questions or comments? Member Chung.
Yeah, several of my colleagues last year wanted to cut positions from the DEI office because they had been vacant for 18 months. And there are several positions, at least one position for 18 months and 2 more for more than 14 months. And I just wish we had some intellectual consistency here. It's disappointing that we're not following the same path. So I think we should fund this, but we should fund it from vacancy savings.
Further questions or comments? Okay, all those who would fund it out of vacancy savings, out of the courts, please identify yourself. So,
Mayor, sorry, I have one more question to kind of follow up on this. So, Judge Day, does the new law require probation and DVOMB for the Victim Rights Act compliance?
The DVOMB requires all treatment providers to comply with the VRA, the Victims' Rights Act. They currently are under that obligation because they have to meet the state requirement to be DVOMB standard certified. That's from a treatment perspective. For a court perspective, we will have new requirements effective January 1 to comply with the VRA notification requirements. That answers the question.
Well, but are there going to be new requirements that actually increase the number of people that are going to be doing probation as a result of the DV statute?
Yes, well, and I'm pausing and I'm hesitating because our court historically has always been very consistent with sentencing in DV cases upon conviction or plea that would include terms of probation. It will now need to be in on the city's code and in their book and on the books. So I'm pausing and hesitating to say, will there be increase in the number of people that will be on probation because of the change in the state law and the requirements of the state law? I pause because I don't know. There will be the requirement that the city follows the sentencing structures of the state that would include probation and treatment for DV cases, but we already do that. So, yeah.
Please.
So, thank you, Mayor. So, as you just said, state law currently requires basically that perpetrators of domestic violence, in order to protect the victims, be sentenced to some kind of classes and rehabilitative services, right?
Unless there's a straight sentence, there's always the requirement of probation for any DV conviction or plea. Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
So part of the challenge that we've had in our courts, which is why I worked with Candace and Doug last year to, bring forward the funding for this pilot, is that a lot of folks are indigent and they're not able to cover the cost of those classes.
And they shouldn't commit crimes.
Okay, and we're gonna have to end up dealing with them no matter what. So the point is.
It's required by state law.
Exactly. So the point I'm trying to make is, yeah, thank you. So the point I'm trying to make is we're gonna be forced to do this one way or another. So I would think it's in our best interest to just fund it and ensure that we are meeting state statute while also delivering better public safety outcomes for our city.
Mayor?
Councilmember Jaworski.
Yeah, I mean, a common theme of these budget meetings in the 2 years that I've been on this council is we always want to talk about the criminals and how we're going to help the criminals, what we're going to give to the criminals. Meanwhile, the victims in this city, I don't think get anything except code enforcement up our ass to clean the graffiti off of our buildings from the crimes being committed against us. So I would encourage a no vote from my colleagues. And I would like to take, thanks.
Okay, please.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Councilmember Jaworski has the floor.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the truth. That's where I stand. That's where I stand firm. It's the businesses in this city that fund this city. You have two of us sitting right here that pay more sales taxes a month than any one of us make on this council. So it's our money. So who's gonna start helping the businesses? You gonna create another fund for that? Are we gonna create a new tax, a fee? What are we gonna do, Juan? I encourage a no vote.
Oh my God. Mayor. Thank you, sir. So I just want to point out that you and some of your colleagues reduced our victims assistance funding bump from $500,000 last year to $100,000. And that $100,000 is still, it was actually double what we normally give our victims assistance fund, but y'all are the ones that cut that, not me. The second thing I'll point out is, yes, if you want to help businesses, I'm absolutely in favor of doing that. And I don't think we should be penalizing people because some joker comes out and tags their building, and then we expect you to actually be the one to fix it. That's on us. I think that we should have more funding for that, Danielle.
Well,
But you don't have to make our city less safe by making it so that folks get violated because they can't meet the conditions of their probation. We should be making sure that these folks are able to live their best life after the fact and be rehabilitated so that they don't reoffend. That's what we're talking about.
So we're gonna have to,
Doesn't mean they don't get to take
question
the
before us
class.
is, do we fund probation, the probation pilot out of the courts? And so is there further discussion on that question? Okay, seeing none, those who favor taking the money out of the vacancy savings, 153,000 out of vacancy savings from the courts. And so even if there's not a vacant, even if they are filled, then of course they're just gonna have to cut their FTE back from the courts to fund the probation pilot, 153,000.
Mayor, sorry to clarify, vacancy savings are not cutting positions. If we're saying you're funding it out of vacancy savings, we're not saying then you have to cut positions if not. That is literally opposed to the definition.
Greg, are you Greg Hayes? Because
I am that guy way off into the future. Yes.
So if you are Greg Hayes, can you answer the question?
I can't ask the question.
If we say vacancy savings and those positions are filled, can they fill the positions? If in fact we say 150.
So what I would say is, there's always gonna be churn and burn on vacancy savings. And if that's your request, what we would do is we would put this in, we would also make a $152,000 vacancy savings target. And then we would watch it throughout the year. And if it turns out that she's got all of her positions filled, then we'll cover it then. We'll figure it out then.
We'll be back to council.
We'll come back to council and go, wow.
Essentially, the proposal is, we're saying to tell her to spend an extra $153,000 without increasing her bottom line. So that's the proposal on the table, is continue the pilot, for the probation pilot program at $14,000 a month, without increasing the court administrator's budget.
Oh, so we've heard from Greg Hayes' dad. Who's standing in for Greg Hayes there? Okay, so, everybody got that explanation? 153,000 out of vacancy savings, for the probation pilot. Those who support it can please identify yourself. Okay. 4, 5. Okay, we have 5, so it doesn't make the list. Okay. Then the next, unless somebody has you can always say.
We pull out our one-time monies that we still have a balance in.
Oh, that's a, yes.
And then we voted no.
Okay.
Well, this was to pull it from vacancy savings. This is from.
Fundamentally, we voted no on.
From the one-time savings from.
For the council has
From state law, I'll be sure to give them.
Okay.
$2 million of one-time fund from
We got 1.2 million right now. Okay, so all those who are for taking it out of, and let me just say, so the only other thing we're competing with is the side, which is 300. 410, that's 410, so we're just gonna be we'll still be under. Okay. Okay, so all those who support taking out the one time.
I have a question. So if we don't fund this, what is our plan to comply with state law?
Who's, yeah.
So we are.
No.
He was like, let me. I heard 410.
You have a lot of responsibility, but I don't know.
I don't want to touch that one. No, I do not.
Yeah, it would just go back to the defendant paying their own fees, which is the way that it's always traditionally been.
May I ask what those fees are?
Well, they could have to take classes.
At the cost of what?
Well, it depends on the class. There's no standard cost. It just depends. There's different levels and different, like some people only have to take 10 weeks, some might have to take longer. Part of the treatment program is also monitoring sobriety, so it also pays for UAs that are taken throughout their probation. There's also, when they first start, there's a screening, and it's not coming to my head but they go through and they do an initial testing, and that's about $200 each defendant when they start out on probation in the victims.
So if they can't afford that, are we gonna open a debtor's prison?
Okay, that's a proposal.
They get excited.
It sounds like half our council would appreciate that.
Oh, okay.
That's not a joke.
Mayor,
Yeah. Okay.
Mayor,
Councilmember Coons.
so for maybe it's the court administrator, Judge Day, or the public defender, I'm not sure whom. So far, how are we seeing this impact compliance with probation conditions? Like, are we seeing people accept probation at a higher rate? Are we seeing people complete and not be violated on their probation at a higher rate? Like, what is the actual impact of these funds so far?
Historically, if I may, before council approved of the pilot project last year, for funds to be available to indigent defendants or people who couldn't pay for their treatment, part of the condition of probation would always be that the offender paid for the treatment that they were voluntarily agreeing, because probation is a voluntary probation sentence. When they go through their intake with the treatment provider, they also do a screening as it relates to finances. It's been historically brought back before the court when somebody has been deemed through that screening process to be indigent for the purposes of treatment. The court will enter an order that the defendant has been deemed to be indigent for the purposes of treatment, so that they can get either a reduced pay or further payment plan for their course of treatment. Treatment providers then follow that court order to where they will set them up with either a reduced pay or a payment plan so that they're not being cited or removed from their treatment because they haven't paid their monthly fee. Have there been times where they haven't gone through that process to where they've been deemed to be, they have not been deemed to be indigent for the purposes of treatment, to where a citation has been filed because they have not paid for their treatment? That does happen. But we have dealt with this scenario for years as it relates to people who have struggled to pay for treatment. And that's the way that we handled it through the court. It can get back before the court and a determination as to they've been declared by the court to be indigent for the purposes of treatment. That's the way that we've handled it.
Would this cover the cost of somebody that is not indigent?
I have, Mayor, I haven't been involved in this program as to the screening and who's been awarded funds. And that was strictly a program that was implemented by probation. I have no idea what the screening process is.
I'd like to hear from Public Works.
Councilmember Lawson. So, Judge D, because I just want to make sure I got it clear. Before we implemented this program last summer, well, we put some funding towards it. We were doing this process prior, where what you just stated, everything that you just stated. So where I'm stuck, because we have people saying it's against the law. If we were doing it prior, why are we against the law? Is it because of the
new change?
The new legislation? Yes. Because I think that legislation would be a little different. You know, so if we don't do this, we're violating the law. What part of that section says that? In that victim's rights?
No, the victim's rights bill deals with
Well, tell me, I guess where I'm stuck is where is, if you were doing this prior, what you just stated, the formality. Can you just tell me under the new law, where is that saying that we're violating the law if we don't do this, the pilot program? That's where I'm, Councilmember McConnell, I want to hear from the judge. I understand you have expertise, but I want to hear from him.
The law that has been passed as relates to municipal courts continuing to prosecute and handle DV cases in municipal court requires us to adopt a sentencing structure.
DV cases?
DV cases. I'm only talking about domestic violence cases.
Okay.
I'm not talking about other probation cases that are non-DV. That would include treatment. There's quite a few, as you can imagine, criminal cases where somebody's sentenced to probation that are non-domestic violence cases, where there would be treatment requirements, substance use disorder, mental health disorder, a bunch of different things. We're only talking about the requirement of our court now being required by law, if you're going to continue to do domestic violence prosecution, municipal court to adopt the same sentencing structure as the state. They have to be the same. They have to be equal.
Okay.
And that was the whole conversation with this bill down at the Capitol, is that they wanted to have uniformity throughout the entire state of Colorado. And as part of that discussion is like, if municipal courts are going to do DV prosecution, they have to do the same type of sentencing structure as the state, which would include a requirement of treatment. Now, and that's probation, right? And so as the state does, they have separate funds available for people who may face the difficulty of paying for their treatment. There are other cities that did so before us, before our court considered to do it last year before this bill. Westminster does DV prosecution, and so they have the funds similar to what the state does as well.
Right.
However, as I've said, what we've done historically for somebody who comes in that may be convicted of a crime or reaches a plea disposition in a DV case, if they have difficulty in paying for their treatment, and that's what we're talking about, is treatment.
Right.
And they come back and notify the court that they are having difficulty paying for their treatment, and they can get a declaration that they are indigent for the purposes of treatment, to where again they can get on a payment plan or a reduced fee for that treatment, to where hopefully they can comply with whatever the requirement would be for that agency in the way of treatment costs.
But Mayor, can I just ask you? So if we're doing that, what you just stated,
right,
then we're in compliance with the law.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We would be in
Okay.
compliance with the
Okay.
law.
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs and then Mayor Pro Tem.
So I don't feel like my question was actually answered. I asked, what is the impact of this program on people accepting terms of probation instead of jail, and people not being violated due to inability to pay? I understand you're saying, oh, we don't really violate people for inability to pay. It's kind of what it seems like you're saying, but I'm just trying to understand what is the actual impact, and if Candace or Elizabeth has any additional information to contribute there, I'd certainly be open to that.
Well, I mean, this program, since we started it, there's been one successful probation completion. I don't feel like we have enough answers on that. Overall, our sites in probation remain about the same. I think we've had some sites which means that they violated their conditions of probation that are on this program. I can't give you that number right now, but overall, the amount of citations that probation has filed has not gone down. But I haven't analyzed that, and since it's been less than a year, it's kind of hard to look at that.
Mayor,
Councilmember.
I would say we've already voted.
You already said.
I'm sorry, Councilmember.
So Judge Day, you said that there are examples when we charge less than the cost of the class when somebody can't afford it. Is that right?
Again, we declare them to be indigent for the purposes of treatment, and they go back to the treatment agency with that declaration and finding by the court that they are indigent for the purposes of treatment, and then they work out time to pay or a payment plan or reduced fee for their treatment.
So in other words, government is already subsidizing the cost of the class in some cases, i.e. taxpayers are already subsidizing the cost of the class.
Is the government subsidizing? Is the government then paying for, or I guess it depends on the way that you look at it in subsidizing. Is it that treatment agency, which has to fit and have to comply with the DVO&B standards, are they doing work for either less than what they would normally charge somebody that had the ability to pay? Yeah, but that's what they've agreed to do as part of the treatment agency, as I understand it, to be part of the DVO&B standard. Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilmember Jareski,
Yeah.
and then.
This vote is final. Like, look, we voted. 5 said yes, so there wasn't 6. We voted. Everybody's had the chance to talk, some 10 times or more. I don't understand why we can't move on and hear from Cindy Collop legitimately about this $420,000 sidewalk. Because
I think because we were given a different proposal by Councilmember McConnell. So the proposal on the floor right now is to take it from the general fund for the $153,000. Where the proposal before was from
Mayor,
vacancies.
it was not from the general fund, it was from our
I'm
remaining
sorry.
one-time budget.
Well, basically, right, still general.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Coombs.
Okay, so although I sometimes ask a lot of questions, at least I consistently abide by the rules of decorum. Can we hear from Ms. Cadiz about the cost of these classes?
Thank you, Councilmember Coombs. Cost class between $25 and $35 at a minimum, 1 class a week for 8 to 10 months. Prior to this voucher program, and honestly, even after the vouchers were approved, because we really didn't have a general understanding of the extent of how many clients that would pay for, or really what the eligibility requirements were. We as a practice, and I as an attorney that's practiced here for 10 years will tell you that typically I tell people that if they can't pay for it, they should not take the risk, because they will go to jail. Because I understand that the court can entertain a finding of indigence. It doesn't stop the treatment agency from violating and discharging our clients and causing the majority of our sites. We are also appointed to represent people every Wednesday on their probation revocations, and usually it's because they can't pay for it. and no other reason. So this voucher program apparently, and I only knew that we ran out of money just as recently as everyone else, caused even probation officers in court this Wednesday to advocate on behalf of our clients facing probation revocations to say things like, they are in great shape. They are doing a really good job on treatment. They're gonna successfully complete this, you guys, because they had the money to do it. So it does affect the victims. The court can't control the treatment agency. And I think it would be doing a disservice for really a minimal cost and to the public safety aspect of all of this. And it's not that it's against the law not to do it, but it's that to be consistent truly with the state, I think is really not doing a complete job of that if you're not also offering the same benefits. They get vouchers when they're indigent, and they're able to muddle through even if they are facing serious financial circumstances.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
One of the concerns that I have that I really haven't addressed because the pilot program ran out of funds is that it has taken one FTE to run this program, to take the applications, to verify the vouchers. So if this is something that we're going to continue, then we need to talk about getting staffing to continue that, whether it's a variable hour or something. But just so you're aware, I mean, it has taken more resources than I ever thought could. So if it continues, that's something that eventually we're going to have to address.
Okay, Councilmember Zavadi.
Last thing, I promise. So are the treatment agencies state-run? And the state requires us to do this. So if they end up having to reduce the cost, they're the ones that are bearing the cost. To Mayor Pro Tem's point, they would be doing it. Are there people who are potentially being put on probation that are not Aurora residents that commit crimes here?
Yes.
So this is, in other words, we would be saving Aurora taxpayer dollars and putting the cost onto the state by having them reduce the cost of treatment. I think that's a better solution. I hope we can move forward and vote this down.
Yes. And I hope we just vote
Okay.
today.
Further questions or comments? Councilmember
It's only for
Summer.
domestic violence, right? Like if someone got a DUI, they're expected to pay for everything, right? For example. And then as far as subsidies goes, these treatment centers are reducing the cost because of a court order. We're not supplying, they're not subsidized.
There's many different areas within the state statutes that require the same type of mandatory treatment, including the DUI offenders and such, sex offenders and such. They're required to complete those treatment requirements as part of their sentence as well. So this isn't just unique to domestic violence. So you're exactly right. But our court only deals with domestic violence.
I wonder where this empathy came from for people that abuse their spouses.
I'm sorry.
It just seems like this extra empathy given towards perpetrators of domestic violence. I don't know where that comes from.
Victim protection.
Can we just vote?
Okay,
Can we vote?
Okay, is there any further questions or comments? I see none. The question before us is to take $153,000 from, what are you going, slush fund?
Council set aside.
Council set aside, to fund the probation pilot program. All those who are for, please identify yourselves.
Which, yes.
Okay, it does not have sufficient votes. So the next one is the, with sidewalks. First of all, want to hear from Public Works.
Right? Judge, what can you tell us about sidewalks?
You have to be in compliance with the ADA.
Oh, there we go.
Well played, sir. So yeah, this, we gave you the update. This is the 410. So if there are any questions, let us know.
Any questions or comments? Is there, okay, all those in favor? Is it, okay, majority of everyone, then that's done.
All right, so that is everything in terms of the adjustments. I think we've got that. we'll get you an exhibit later this week, showing you those changes. If there's no other changes, the only other thing we want to draw your attention to is, we sent out your backup, you all, as part of your budget adoption, you all act as ex officio for a number of other things, including some general improvement districts and some other things. So that was in your, that on the table today, Greg?
Yep, that's in your packet is the proposed GIDs. So you asked for the GIDs for the people who have voted to tax themselves, to either do fencing or waste treatment, anything that's in their areas. It's very technical. It's just you're approving their budget.
Is there any objection?
Any questions or anything on those?
And this will come forward to the next formal meeting.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, the current adoption plan for the budget, including the GIDs, is first reading on the 9th, second reading on the 20.
It's one past that, right? First reading is 26.
I'll look it up.
Okay.
First reading is November 6th.
October 26th.
October 26th. That's the first reading, yeah, second reading is.
So yeah, so first reading on the 26th, second reading, first meeting in November. So that's it in terms of the timing. If there's nothing else, sir.
Well, wait, one thing. Does anybody have any questions? I put in the proposed service fees into the packet. We did go to M&F with the service fees. They went through, they approved them coming forward to you. If you have any questions on any of the service fees, let me know. And it doesn't need to go forward to council. That's just informational only.
Please tell Greg Hayes I thought you did a great job.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. Great job.
Mr. Records.
There are box lunches, so you can grab your box lunch on your way out.